The notification came at 11:47 a.m., 33 minutes before I was supposed to walk down the aisle at the Rosewood Chapel in Millbrook Springs. My phone buzzed against the marble countertop of the bridal suite as my maid of honor, Sophia, was adjusting my veil. The sound cut through the excited chatter of my bridesmaids like a knife through silk. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Transaction declined. Insufficient funds. I stared at the screen, my heart stopping mid-beat. Another notification, then another. The catering payment, the photographer's final invoice, the venue's day of coordinator fee, all bouncing back like rubber balls thrown against a brick wall. My name is Cassandra Vale, and from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Have you ever had your parents sabotage the most important day of your life because you refused to be their retirement plan? Because that's exactly what happened to me on what was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Cass, what's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost, Sophia said, her voice cutting through the fog of disbelief that was settling over me like a suffocating blanket. I couldn't speak, couldn't breathe. My wedding dress suddenly felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds, the intricate beadwork that had taken months to perfect now feeling like chains around my chest. I had worked 3 jobs through college to save for this day. I had sacrificed vacations, designer clothes, nights out with friends. Every penny had gone into my dream wedding account, the one I had been building for 4 years, the account that was now showing a balance of $47.83. There has to be a mistake, I whispered, my voice barely audible over the sound of my heartbeat pounding in my ears. But even as I said it, I knew there wasn't, because my parents, Margaret and Edmund Vale, were the only other people with access to that account, the account I had foolishly added them to 6 months ago when they convinced me it would be easier for emergencies and just in case something happened to me. What I didn't know was that they had been planning their own emergency, their retirement emergency. My phone rang, the caller ID showed. Mom, but I already knew what this conversation would be. I could feel it in my bones, the same way you feel a storm coming before you see the clouds. Cassie, honey, my mother's voice was syrupy sweet, the tone she used when she was about to deliver devastating news wrapped in false concern. I hope you're not upset about the account situation. Upset? As if they had accidentally used the wrong sugar in my coffee instead of stealing my entire wedding fund 3 hours before my ceremony. Mom, what did you do? The words came out as a whisper, but they felt like screams in my throat. Now don't be dramatic, sweetheart. Your father and I had a financial emergency. The investment we made for our retirement didn't pan out, and we needed to cover some immediate expenses. We knew you'd understand. Family helps family, right? Family helps family. The phrase that had been used to justify every boundary they had crossed, every sacrifice they had demanded, every time they had chosen their comfort over my dreams. This is my wedding day, Mom. My wedding is in 30 minutes. Oh, honey, I'm sure Marcus will understand if you have to postpone. Real love doesn't depend on fancy ceremonies. Besides, you two are young. You have plenty of time to save up again. My fiancé, who was probably standing at the altar right now, adjusting his tie nervously, wondering why his bride-to-be hadn't appeared for photos. Marcus, who had spent his own savings on the honeymoon to Santorini because I had insisted on paying for the wedding myself. Marcus, who was about to discover that his future in-laws had just destroyed what was supposed to be the beginning of our forever. How much? I asked, my voice steadier now, though my hands were shaking so violently I nearly dropped the phone. How much what, dear? How much did you take from my wedding account? A pause. A long, telling pause that confirmed what I already knew. Well, we had to cover the down payment on the retirement condo in Palm Beach Gardens. It's a lovely place, Cassie. You'll love visiting us there. And then there were some medical bills from your father's procedure last month, and the cruise deposit for our anniversary trip. How much? $127,000. The number hit me like a physical blow. $127,000. 4 years of working double shifts at the bookstore while finishing my master's degree. 4 years of eating ramen noodles and shopping at thrift stores. 4 years of saying no to every invitation, every trip, every small luxury because I was saving for this one perfect day. Gone. Not spent on an emergency, not borrowed in desperation. Stolen for luxury condos and anniversary cruises while I stood in my wedding dress with reporters and photographers waiting, with 150 guests seated in the chapel, with Marcus probably wondering if I had gotten cold feet and run. "Cassandra, are you there? You need to understand, we raised you, we sacrificed for you, and now it's time for you to sacrifice for us. That's how families work." That's when I heard it. In the background of her call, the sound of waves. Not through a window, not from a TV show. Real waves, with the distinctive sound of seagulls and that particular echo you only get when you're standing on a beach. They weren't at home dealing with a financial emergency. They were already in Palm Beach Gardens, probably sipping champagne on the balcony of their new retirement condo, the one they had just purchased with my wedding money. "Where are you right now, Mom?" Another pause. We're at home, of course, waiting to hear how the wedding goes, but I could hear a steel drum band starting up in the background, the kind they have at beachside resort happy hours, the kind they definitely don't have in Millbrook Springs, Ohio. That's when something crystallized inside me, something cold and sharp and absolutely final. They weren't just stealing my money, they were lying to my face while doing it. They had planned this, they had waited until my wedding day, when they knew I would be too emotional and too pressed for time to fight back effectively. They had calculated that I would be so desperate to save my wedding day that I would just accept it and move on. That I would be the good daughter, the understanding daughter, the daughter who always cleaned up their messes and never asked questions. But as I stood there in my $1,000 wedding dress that I had saved for 8 months to buy, surrounded by the bridesmaids who had taken time off work to be here, knowing that my future husband was waiting at an altar decorated with flowers I had personally chosen and paid for, I realized something that would change everything. I wasn't just their daughter anymore. In 30 minutes, I was supposed to become someone's wife, and wives protect their families. My parents had just declared war on my family. They had no idea what they had unleashed. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I hung up on my mother and immediately called my bank. My hands were trembling so violently that I had to dial twice, my French manicure clicking against the screen like tiny hammers against glass. "First National Bank, this is Derek speaking. How can I help you today?" "This is Cassandra Vale, account number 4847293. I need to know about the transactions on my savings account from the past week." My voice sounded foreign to me, like someone else was speaking through my throat. Sophia was watching me with growing alarm, her eyes wide as she took in my pale face and shaking hands. In the background, I could hear my other bridesmaids, my college roommate Emma, my cousin Riley, and Marcus's sister Hannah, chatting excitedly about the ceremony, completely oblivious to the disaster unfolding. "Ma'am, I'm showing several large withdrawals over the past 5 days. The largest was yesterday for $89,000, then $23,000 on Tuesday, and $15,000 on Monday. All were authorized by the secondary account holders." Secondary account holders. My parents. "Derek, those withdrawals were not authorized by me. This is theft." "Ma'am, I understand your concern, but both account holders have equal access rights. According to our records, Margaret Vale and Edmund Vale were added to this account in January with full withdrawal privileges. Legally, this isn't theft. It's authorized account access." The room started spinning. I grabbed the edge of the vanity table, my knuckles white against the dark wood. January. They had been planning this since January. 6 months of planning to destroy my wedding day. "Miss Cassandra?" It was Hannah, Marcus's 22-year-old sister, peeking around the corner. "The wedding coordinator is asking if you're ready for photos. Marcus is getting kind of nervous because—" "Tell them 5 more minutes," Sophia cut her off smoothly, shooting me a look that said she understood something catastrophic was happening. I ended the call with Derek and immediately dialed Marcus. He answered on the first ring. "Cass, baby, where are you? The photographer wants to do the first look shots, and your parents haven't shown up yet." My mom is starting to ask questions. Of course they hadn't shown up. They were 1,000 miles away, probably toasting their new retirement with my wedding champagne budget. "Marcus, I need you to sit down." "I'm already sitting, babe. What's wrong? You sound weird. My parents stole our wedding money, all of it. The account is empty." Silence. Complete, deafening silence that stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. "What do you mean stolen?" "I mean they took $127,000 from my wedding account. The caterer isn't paid. The photographer isn't paid. The venue coordinator is about to find out her check bounced. But the wedding is in 25 minutes, Cass. There are 150 people out there. My grandmother flew in from Seattle. Your college friends drove 8 hours to be here. I could hear the panic creeping into his voice, the same panic that was clawing at my chest like a wild animal. I know, I'm trying to figure out what to do. Okay, let me think. I have about $8,000 in my checking account from the honeymoon fund. That should cover the immediate vendor payments, right? Marcus. Sweet, logical Marcus, who always tried to fix everything, who probably thought this was just a banking error that could be resolved with a phone call and his emergency savings. Marcus, $8,000 won't even cover the catering deposit. The total bill for today is $47,000. Another silence. $47,000, Cassandra? I thought you said the wedding was costing $35,000. The final costs came in higher than expected. The flowers, the upgraded linens, the extended reception time. I was rambling now, trying to explain decisions I had made months ago when I thought I had a fully funded wedding account. Jesus Christ. I rarely heard Marcus swear, but when he did, it meant he was at his breaking point. And your parents just took it? They bought a retirement condo in Palm Beach Gardens. They're there right now, lying to my face about being home. I could hear him breathing heavily through the phone, could picture him running his hands through his perfectly styled hair, probably leaving it standing in peaks. What do you want to do, Cass? Do we postpone? Do we try to salvage something smaller? Do we? A knock at the door cut him off. The wedding coordinator, Maria Santos, peeked her head in with a smile that immediately faltered when she saw my face. Miss Vale, I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have a small issue. The catering payment seems to have been declined, and Golden Crown Catering is asking about. Maria, can you give me 2 minutes, please? She nodded, clearly sensing the crisis, and closed the door softly. Marcus, I'll call you back in 5 minutes. I need to figure out how bad this really is. Cass, wait. But I hung up and immediately started dialing vendors. Golden Crown Catering first. This is Cassandra Vale. I'm getting married today at Rosewood Chapel. I think there might be an issue with my payment. Miss Vale, yes. We've been trying to reach you. Your final payment of $18,500 was declined this morning. We need payment before we can begin service setup. Next call, Peterson Photography. Miss Vale, I was just about to call you. There seems to be a problem with your final payment. We'll need to settle the $3,200 balance before the ceremony. Aurora Floral Design, $4 balance needs to be paid today. Millbrook Spring String Quartet, $1,200 due immediately. Each call was like another nail in the coffin of my perfect day. By the time I finished, I had a list of immediate payments totaling $31,400 just to get through the ceremony and reception. Sophia was sitting beside me now, rubbing my back as I stared at the numbers I had scribbled on the back of my wedding timeline. Cass, talk to me. What's happening? My parents stole my wedding money to buy a retirement condo. Every vendor wants payment before they'll start working. And Marcus thinks this is all some kind of banking error that we can fix with his honeymoon savings. Those fucking bastards, Sophia said, and I almost laughed despite everything because Sophia never swore. On your wedding day? What kind of people do that to their own daughter? The kind of people who had been treating me like their personal ATM since I got my first job at 16. I realized, the kind of people who had borrowed money for emergencies that were never emergencies, who had guilted me into paying for family vacations I wasn't invited on, who had made me feel selfish for wanting to keep any money for myself. The kind of people who saw my wedding day not as the most important day of my life, but as the perfect opportunity to steal from me when I would be too distracted and too emotional to fight back effectively. My phone buzzed with a text from my mother. Darling, I hope you're not letting this little hiccup ruin your special day. Remember, material things aren't what matter. Love is what matters. Can't wait to see photos. A little hiccup. That's when I felt it. The shift. The moment when shock and panic crystallized into something much more dangerous. Rage. The rage lasted exactly 47 seconds. I know because I was staring at the antique clock on the vanity table, watching the second hand tick away precious minutes of what was supposed to be my perfect day. Then reality crashed down like a building collapsing, and the rage transformed into something much worse. Complete devastation. I slumped forward in my chair, my wedding dress pooling around me like spilled cream, and for the first time since I was 12 years old, I started to cry. Not the delicate tears that could be dabbed away without ruining makeup. The ugly, body-shaking sobs that come from somewhere so deep you didn't even know that place existed. Cass, honey, breathe. Sophia was saying, but her voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. We can figure this out. We can fix this. But that was just it. There was no fixing this. In 18 minutes, I was supposed to walk down an aisle lined with white roses that cost $400 per arrangement. In 18 minutes, Marcus was supposed to see me in my grandmother's vintage veil, the one I had spent 2 months having restored by a specialist in Cincinnati. In 18 minutes, our guests were going to watch us exchange vows I had been writing and rewriting for 6 months, promises of forever that we were supposed to make under an archway of peonies that had been shipped in from a farm in Oregon because they were my absolute favorite flower. None of that was going to happen now, because my parents had decided that their retirement was more important than my wedding day. My phone was buzzing constantly now, text after text, call after call, Marcus trying to reach me, the wedding coordinator probably panicking about vendor payments, maybe guests starting to wonder why things were running late. But all I could think about was the conversation I'd had with my mother just 3 weeks ago. We had been sitting in her kitchen, the kitchen in the house I had helped them buy when Dad's construction business went under 2 years ago. I had co-signed the mortgage when their credit couldn't qualify. I had made the down payment from my savings. "I'm so proud of you, Cassie," she had said, stirring sugar into her coffee. "Look at you, planning this beautiful wedding, building a life with Marcus. You've always been our little miracle." Our little miracle. The daughter who had worked since she was 16 to help pay family bills. The daughter who had taken out student loans so she could give her college fund to help with their mortgage. The daughter who had never asked them for a single thing, not for prom dress money or graduation gift money or help with anything, because I knew they were struggling. Struggling. While they were planning vacations to Palm Beach Gardens and looking at retirement condos that cost more than most people's houses. "Cassandra?" A soft knock at the door, followed by Emma's voice. "Sweetie, the guests are starting to ask questions. Marcus's mom wants to know if everything's okay." Everything was not okay. Everything was the opposite of okay. I looked at myself in the mirror, and the woman staring back at me was unrecognizable. My carefully applied makeup was streaked with tears. My hair, which had taken 2 hours to style into the perfect vintage waves, was coming undone where I had been running my hands through it. My dress, the dress I had dreamed about since I was 8 years old watching my cousin Sarah's wedding, now felt like a costume for a play I no longer wanted to be in. "Tell them," I started, then stopped. What was I supposed to tell them? That my parents had stolen my wedding money? That the ceremony might not happen? That I was sitting in a bridal suite having the worst breakdown of my life while they waited patiently in wooden pews for a bride who might not be coming? My phone rang again. "Marcus," I answered on the 5th ring. "Cass, please talk to me. People are starting to worry. My aunt just asked if you got cold feet." Cold feet. As if this was about being nervous about marriage instead of being financially sabotaged by the people who were supposed to love me most. "Marcus, I can't do this. I can't walk out there and pretend everything is okay when it's not. When my entire wedding is falling apart, and my parents are sipping cocktails on a beach somewhere with my money. Baby, listen to me. We don't need the fancy stuff. We don't need the upgraded flowers or the string quartet or the 5-course dinner. We just need each other, right? We can have the ceremony, exchange rings, and worry about the rest later." Sweet Marcus. Still trying to fix everything, still believing that love could overcome logistics and that vendors would just magically accept IOUs and good intentions. "Marcus, you don't understand. Without payment, the caterer isn't setting up food, the photographer isn't taking pictures, the musicians aren't playing, the coordinator isn't coordinating, there won't be a reception, there will barely be a ceremony. Then we'll have the smallest, simplest wedding in history, just us, the officiant, and our families. We'll figure out the rest." "Our families," I repeated, the words tasting bitter. "My family just destroyed my wedding day for a retirement condo, and you want me to stand up there and promise to honor them?" A long pause. "Cass, you're not marrying your parents, you're marrying me." He was right, of course, but it didn't change the fact that every time I looked at the empty chairs where my parents were supposed to sit, I would remember this moment. Every time someone asked about my wedding day for the rest of my life, I would have to either lie or tell them that my parents chose themselves over my happiness on the most important day of my life. "I need a minute, Marcus. I need to think." "We don't have a minute, babe. We have 12 minutes before the ceremony starts." 12 minutes. 12 minutes to decide whether to go through with a wedding that would forever be associated with betrayal and heartbreak, or to walk out there and explain to 150 people that we needed to postpone because my parents were thieves. I hung up and looked at Sophia, who had been listening to the entire conversation with growing horror on her face. "What do you want to do?" she asked quietly. "I want to rewind 3 hours and never give my parents access to my account. I want to rewind 6 months and never trust them when they said they needed to be on the account for emergencies. I want to rewind my entire childhood and have parents who saw their daughter's happiness as more important than their own comfort." "But you can't rewind, Cass. So what do you want to do right now, in this moment?" I stared at my reflection again. At the wedding dress that represented 4 years of sacrifice and dreams, at the engagement ring that Marcus had saved for 8 months to buy, at the face of a woman who had just learned that her parents valued a beach vacation more than her special day. That's when I noticed something else in the mirror. Behind my reflection, hanging on the back of the bathroom door, was my going-away outfit. A simple blue dress and comfortable flats, the outfit I was supposed to change into before leaving for our honeymoon. Our honeymoon that Marcus had paid for because I insisted on covering the wedding costs myself. Our honeymoon to Santorini with the infinity pool suite and the couple's massage package and the sunset dinner cruise that was supposed to be the perfect start to our married life. Our honeymoon that was happening either way, wedding or no wedding, because Marcus had been smart enough not to trust my parents with access to those reservations. And that's when it hit me, the thing that would change everything. I was thinking about this all wrong. I was thinking like the dutiful daughter who always cleaned up her parents' messes, who always put their needs before her own, who always found a way to make their problems disappear. But I wasn't just their daughter anymore. In 12 minutes or not, I was supposed to become someone's wife. And wives protected their husbands. Wives made sure their new families were safe from people who would hurt them. My parents hadn't just stolen my wedding money, they had stolen Marcus's wedding day too. They had humiliated him in front of his family and friends. They had turned what should have been the happiest day of his life into a crisis he was desperately trying to solve with inadequate resources. They had declared war on my new family, and they had no idea what they had just unleashed. I stood up so abruptly that my wedding dress rustled like autumn leaves, and for the first time in 20 minutes my mind felt crystal clear. The crying stopped. The panic receded. In its place was something I had never felt before: cold, calculating focus. "Sophia, I need you to do exactly what I tell you, and I need you to not ask questions until after I explain everything. Can you do that?" She blinked at me, probably startled by the complete transformation in my voice. "Of course, but Cass, no questions yet. First, I need you to go downstairs and tell Marcus that the wedding is happening. Tell him I'm handling the vendor situation and that he should proceed as planned. Tell the wedding coordinator that payments are being processed and to begin setup immediately. But how are you going to no questions, remember? Second, I need you to find my laptop. It's in the overnight bag by the window. Bring it here and make sure no one else comes in this room for the next 10 minutes. Sophia stared at me for a moment, then nodded and rushed out of the room. I could hear her heels clicking rapidly down the hardwood hallway, then her voice calling out reassurances to someone, probably Marcus or the coordinator. While she was gone, I pulled out my phone and opened my banking app. But instead of looking at my devastated wedding account, I navigated to a different screen, one I had been avoiding thinking about because it represented something I never thought I would have to use: my parents' retirement account, the one they had begged me to co-manage 3 years ago when Dad's construction business was failing and they were terrified of losing everything. The one they had insisted I needed access to just in case something happened to them. The one I had been contributing to for the past 2 years, adding money from my bonuses and tax refunds because they had convinced me their retirement was in jeopardy. The account that currently held $847,000. I had never paid attention to how much was in there because I trusted them when they said they were barely scraping by. But looking at it now, really looking at the balance and the transaction history, I could see the truth they had been hiding from me. Deposits from the sale of Dad's vintage motorcycle collection, the one he told me he had to sell to pay bills, but the money had actually gone straight into retirement savings. Deposits from Mom's part-time job at the library, which she had told me barely covered groceries. Regular monthly deposits that I now realized were probably from other family members they had been manipulating the same way they had manipulated me. And there, in the transaction history, were my contributions: $15,000 from my tax refund last year, $8,000 from my Christmas bonus, $12,000 from the freelance graphic design work I had been doing on weekends, work I had told Marcus I was doing to build my portfolio, but was actually doing to help my parents' desperate financial situation. They weren't desperate, they were wealthy. They had been building a massive retirement fund while telling me they couldn't afford basic expenses, while letting me sacrifice my own financial security to help them, while watching me work multiple jobs and live in a tiny apartment so I could contribute to their future. The wedding money they had stolen wasn't even money they needed, it was just money they wanted. Money they took because they could, because they had trained me never to question their financial decisions, because they knew I would be too shocked and too pressed for time to fight back effectively. Sophia returned with my laptop, closing the door firmly behind her and standing guard like a sentinel. "Okay, what's the plan?" she asked, setting the laptop on the vanity table. I opened it and logged into the retirement account management portal, my fingers moving with surgical precision across the keyboard. My parents have been lying to me about their financial situation for years. They have nearly $1 million in retirement savings, money that I've been contributing to because I thought they were struggling. They stole my wedding money not because they needed it, but because they wanted it, because they've been using me as their personal bank account since I was 16, and they saw no reason to stop now. Sophia's mouth fell open. $847,000? Cassandra, that's enough to pay for 10 weddings like this one. I finished, pulling up the account transfer options. And here's what's going to happen. They stole $127,000 from me today. So I'm going to transfer exactly $127,000 from their retirement account to my personal checking account. Not theft reimbursement. Can you do that? Legally? I showed her the account management screen, where my name was listed as co-manager with full transfer privileges. They set this up themselves 3 years ago. I have the same access to their retirement fund that they gave themselves to my wedding account. But Cass, if you take their retirement money, I'm not taking their retirement money, I'm taking my money back. Plus, $127,000 out of $847,000 still leaves them with more than enough to retire comfortably. They'll just have to do it without the bonus vacation condo they bought with my wedding fund. I initiated the transfer, watching as the system processed my request. Electronic funds transfer, same-day processing for co-managed accounts. The money would be available within 2 hours, plenty of time to pay every vendor and proceed with the wedding as planned. But I wasn't finished. "What else are you doing?" Sophia asked, watching me navigate to a different section of the banking portal. "I'm reviewing all the accounts where I have any kind of access or co-signing responsibility." I pulled up a spreadsheet I had created years ago to help manage their finances. The spreadsheet they had requested when they convinced me they needed help organizing their money. Their checking account, where I was an authorized user. Their savings account, where I was a backup contact. The credit card where I was a co-signer. The home equity line of credit that was in both our names. The investment account, where I was listed as a beneficiary with access privileges. Account after account where they had given me legal access, not because they trusted me, but because they needed me to guarantee their creditworthiness, because my income and credit score had been necessary to qualify for their lifestyle upgrades. "Cassandra, what are you thinking right now? Because you have that look that used to terrify our college professors." I smiled for the first time in an hour, and I could feel that it wasn't a particularly warm smile. "I'm thinking that my parents made a serious tactical error. They assumed that because I was the responsible one, the one who always fixed their problems, I would just accept this theft and find a way to work around it. They assumed I would be too emotional, too pressed for time, too focused on salvaging my wedding day to retaliate. And they were wrong. They were catastrophically wrong. Because they forgot something important about me." I turned the laptop screen toward her, showing the account management portal with all of our connected finances displayed like a spiderweb of mutual dependency. "They forgot that I'm not just generous. I'm also the one who's been managing their money for 3 years. I'm the co-signer on their debt. I'm the guarantor on their credit. I'm the authorized user who can freeze their accounts. I'm the person whose income has been propping up their credit score and enabling their lifestyle." I pulled out my phone and started making notes in a new document, listing each account and my access level. They've been treating me like their personal ATM for years, taking my money whenever they wanted it and assuming I would never fight back. But what they didn't consider is that ATMs work both ways. They don't just dispense money, they also control access to it. Sophia sat down heavily in the chair beside me. "You're going to cut them off from everything." "I'm going to protect my new family from financial predators," I corrected. "My husband doesn't deserve to spend his marriage cleaning up messes created by people who see our success as their personal funding source. Any children we might have don't deserve grandparents who will steal their college funds for vacation money." So what's the plan? I looked at my reflection in the laptop screen, and the woman looking back at me was someone I didn't recognize, someone harder, someone who had learned, in the space of an hour, that love without boundaries wasn't love at all. It was exploitation with better marketing. The plan is simple. I'm going to get married today, exactly as scheduled, with every vendor paid and every detail perfect, and then I'm going to teach my parents what happens when you mistake someone's kindness for weakness. And how exactly are you going to do that? I closed the laptop and stood up, smoothing down my wedding dress. In 6 minutes, I was going to walk down the aisle and marry the man I loved. In 6 minutes, I was going to start a new life with someone who saw my value as more than my bank balance. I'm going to use the same weapon they used on me, I said, checking my makeup in the mirror and finding that somehow, miraculously, the tears had made me look more radiant instead of destroyed. I'm going to use their trust against them. I walked down that aisle 47 minutes later than scheduled, but I walked down it as a woman who had just discovered her own power. Every step in my ivory silk heels was deliberate, every breath calculated. The string quartet, now fully paid, played Pacquiao Bell's Canon in D exactly as I had dreamed, and the white roses lining the aisle released their perfect fragrance into the late afternoon air. Marcus was standing at the altar in his charcoal gray tuxedo, and when our eyes met, I saw relief flood his face so completely that it almost broke my heart. He had no idea that in the past hour, I had become someone entirely different, someone who had learned that love meant protection, not just devotion. The ceremony was flawless. Every vendor performed exactly as contracted, because every vendor had been paid in full by 1:15 p.m. I said my vows with complete sincerity, promising to love and protect Marcus for the rest of my life, and I meant every word, especially the part about protection. During the cocktail hour, while our guests mingled on the terrace and toasted our happiness with champagne that I had personally ensured was the best vintage available, I excused myself to the bridal suite one final time. I had work to finish. I opened my laptop and began executing the plan I had been formulating throughout the entire ceremony. Each action was surgical, precise, and completely legal. First, I accessed the home equity line of credit where I was the primary cosigner. My parents had opened this line 3 years ago to renovate the kitchen, but I had seen the bank statements. The money had gone toward a new truck for Dad and a jewelry shopping spree for Mom. The $87,000 line of credit was nearly maxed out, with minimum payments that had been automatically deducted from my checking account for the past 18 months. I suspended the automatic payments, effective immediately. Next, I opened the credit card management portal for the 3 cards where I was either a cosigner or authorized user. The cards they had used for their emergency expenses over the years, emergencies that had included spa weekends, electronics, and home decor shopping sprees. The cards that carried a combined balance of $34,000, all with minimum payments automatically charged to my accounts. I removed my bank information from all automatic payment systems. Then I removed myself as an authorized user on 2 of the cards. The 3rd card, where I was the primary account holder because their credit couldn't qualify a loan, I suspended entirely. My phone was buzzing with notifications, but I ignored them. I wasn't finished. I accessed their homeowner's insurance account, the one that was in my name, because their claims history had made them uninsurable under standard policies. I didn't cancel it immediately. That would have been cruel and potentially illegal. Instead, I changed the billing address to their new address in Palm Beach Gardens and set up a payment plan that would require them to pay the full annual premium within 30 days instead of the comfortable monthly payments I had been covering. Then came the utilities. 3 years ago, when they had defaulted on their electricity bill and faced disconnection, I had agreed to put the accounts in my name temporarily. Temporarily had become permanently when they realized how much easier it was to let me handle all their monthly expenses. I transferred every utility account back to their names. Electric, gas, water, trash, internet, cable. The utility companies would require deposits for new service, significant deposits given their credit history. But that wasn't my problem anymore. Their car insurance came next. Both vehicles were insured under a family plan that I managed and paid for, a plan that saved them hundreds of dollars per month because my spotless driving record qualified for premium discounts. I removed both of their vehicles from my policy and notified the DMV that I was no longer financially responsible for their registrations. My laptop was getting warm from the constant activity, and I could hear the band starting up in the reception hall below. Our first dance would be in 20 minutes, and I wanted to be finished before then. I opened the investment account management portal. This was the big one, the account where I wasn't just a contributor but the primary account holder. They had begged me to open an investment account in my name 2 years ago when their poor credit prevented them from accessing better investment options. I had been adding money to it monthly, building what I thought was a retirement safety net for all of us. The account currently held $127,000, exactly the amount they had stolen from my wedding fund. I liquidated the entire account. The money would be transferred to my personal savings within 2 business days. Not theft, not revenge. Simple closure of an account that was legally mine to begin with. But I saved the best for last. The mortgage. 3 years ago, when my parents' house was facing foreclosure, I had refinanced the entire property in my name. Their credit scores were too damaged from previous defaults to qualify for any reasonable interest rate, but my excellent credit had secured a mortgage at 3.2% interest. The house was technically mine, deed, mortgage, everything in my name. But I had never exercised any ownership rights because I trusted them to treat it as their home. That trust had expired at 11:47 a.m. when they chose a luxury condo over my wedding day. I didn't initiate foreclosure proceedings. I didn't change the locks or evict them. I wasn't cruel. I was strategic. I contacted the mortgage company and informed them that I would be placing the property on the market within 60 days. As the legal owner, I had every right to sell my own house. I requested a market analysis and began the process of selecting a real estate agent. The house would sell quickly. It was in an excellent neighborhood, fully renovated with my money, and priced competitively. After paying off the remaining mortgage balance, the profit would be substantial. My parents would have 60 days to find new housing arrangements. While I was uploading the last of the necessary documents to the real estate portal, my phone rang. "Marcus, baby, where are you? Everyone's asking about the first dance." "I'm coming down now," I said, closing the laptop with a satisfying click. "Just had some paperwork to finish." "Paperwork? On our wedding day?" "Just some loose ends I needed to tie up. Nothing important." I stood up and smoothed my dress, checking my reflection one final time. The woman in the mirror looked radiant, happy, peaceful in a way I hadn't felt in years. In the space of 2 hours, I had systematically dismantled every financial connection between myself and my parents, every automatic payment, every co-signed obligation, every safety net I had provided had been methodically removed. They would wake up tomorrow in their Palm Beach Gardens condo, the condo they had bought with my money, to discover that their daughter was no longer their personal banking system, but more importantly, they would discover that their daughter was no longer available for financial exploitation. As I walked toward the door, my phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at it, expecting Marcus or one of the bridesmaids. It was from my mother. "Having the most wonderful time in Florida. The condo is perfect. Hope your little wedding went well despite the money situation. We'll call tomorrow to hear all about it. Your little wedding." I deleted the message without responding and headed downstairs to dance with my husband. They had taught me that actions spoke louder than words. Tomorrow they would discover exactly how loudly my actions could speak. Marcus and I were having breakfast on our hotel balcony in Santorini, watching the sunrise paint the white buildings in shades of gold and pink, when my phone started buzzing like an angry wasp. It was 6:47 a.m. Greek time, which meant it was 11:47 p.m. back home in Ohio, exactly 24 hours after my parents had stolen my wedding money. The irony of the timing wasn't lost on me. The first call was from my father. I let it go to voicemail, then another call, this time from my mother, then another from Dad, then Mom again. By the time Marcus returned from the breakfast buffet with fresh coffee and Greek pastries, I had 17 missed calls and 12 text messages. "Someone's popular this morning," Marcus said, settling into his chair and reaching for my hand. "Everything okay back home?" I smiled and turned my phone face down on the table. Just some family drama. Nothing that can't wait until after our honeymoon. But curiosity got the better of me. While Marcus was distracted by the spectacular view of the caldera, I picked up my phone and started reading the messages. The first text from Mom, sent at 11:52 p.m. Ohio time. "Cassie, there seems to be some kind of mistake with our accounts. Can you call us when you get this?" Then from Dad at 12:15 a.m. "Cassandra, we need to talk. There's been some kind of banking error." Mom at 12:43 a.m. "Honey, this is urgent. Our electricity bill is saying we owe deposits. This has to be a mistake." Dad at 1:22 a.m. "The credit card company is saying our account is suspended. You need to call them and fix this." Mom at 1:58 a.m. Cassie, we're getting very worried. Nothing is working properly. Please call us back. The messages continued throughout the night, each one progressively more desperate, more demanding, more panicked. By 3 a.m., they had apparently figured out that this wasn't a series of coincidental banking errors. Dad at 3:17 a.m. Cassandra Vale, you call us back right now. We know what you did, and you need to fix it immediately. Mom at 3:44 a.m. How could you do this to us? We're your parents. This is vindictive and cruel. Dad at 4:21 a.m. You're being a spoiled brat. So what if we used some of your wedding money? We raised you. We deserve to be comfortable. Mom at 5:03 a.m. The house insurance people are saying we need to pay $3,400 by next week or we'll lose coverage. Fix this now. And finally, the message that made me smile into my Greek coffee. Dad at 6:12 a.m. Fine. If you want to play hardball, we can play hardball too. But remember, we still have your grandmother's ring and your childhood photos, and we can make your life very difficult if you don't start acting like a grateful daughter. Threats. They had moved from panic to manipulation to outright threats in the span of 6 hours. I opened the voicemail app and started listening to the messages, putting in my earbuds so Marcus wouldn't be disturbed. The first voicemail from Dad was relatively calm. Cassie, it's Dad. Look, there seems to be some confusion with the bank accounts. Can you call us back and help us sort this out? Thanks, sweetheart. By the fifth voicemail, the calm facade had completely cracked. Cassandra, this is not funny anymore. We're sitting here with bills we can't pay because you've done something vindictive and petty. The power company wants a $800 deposit to keep our electricity on. The internet is being shut off tomorrow. You need to call us back and fix this mess you've created. The eighth voicemail was my mother, crying. Cassie, please, I don't understand what's happening. Everything is falling apart and we don't know why. We're your parents, honey. We love you. Please just call us back and help us figure this out. But it was the final voicemail, left just 20 minutes ago, that revealed exactly how desperate they had become. Cassandra, this is your father, and I'm only going to say this once. I don't know what kind of tantrum you're throwing, but it ends now. We called the bank, and they told us you transferred money out of our retirement account. That's theft, young lady. That's our money, and if you don't put it back immediately, we're calling the police. We're also calling a lawyer, and we're calling your new husband's family to let them know exactly what kind of person they welcomed into their family. A thief. A vindictive little girl who steals from her own parents because she didn't get her way. You have until noon today to fix this, or there will be consequences. I deleted the voicemail and took a sip of my coffee, watching a fishing boat navigate the crystal blue waters below our balcony. Consequences. They were threatening me with consequences. My phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was from back home. I answered it. Is this Cassandra Vale? The voice was crisp, professional, female. This is Cassandra Donnelly now. Actually. Who's calling? This is Rebecca Martinez from Pinnacle Real Estate. Your parents asked me to call you about the house at 847 Maple Grove Drive. They seem to be under the impression that there's been some kind of mistake about the property being listed for sale. I almost laughed. No mistake, Rebecca. I'm the legal owner of that property and I've decided to sell it. I believe you should have received the listing paperwork from Hartwell & Associates yesterday. Yes, I did receive those documents and everything appears to be in order. But your parents are quite upset. They're saying this is all a misunderstanding and that they've lived in the house for 3 years. They have lived in the house for 3 years as my tenants. But the deed is in my name, the mortgage is in my name, and I've decided to exercise my right to sell my own property. They'll have 60 days from the listing date to make alternative arrangements. A pause. I see. And you're certain about this decision, because they seem to believe that you'll change your mind. I'm absolutely certain, Rebecca. In fact, I'd like you to schedule the photography and staging for as soon as possible. I want this property on the market within 2 weeks. Understood, Mrs. Donnelly. I'll be in touch. I hung up and immediately called my lawyer. Yes, I had a lawyer now. Someone I had retained 2 months ago when I started planning my financial independence from my parents. I had been thinking about it since long before the wedding, but their theft had simply accelerated my timeline. Jennifer Mitchell's office, this is Sarah. Hi Sarah, this is Cassandra Donnelly. I need to speak with Jennifer as soon as possible about the documentation we discussed last month. Of course, Mrs. Donnelly. Let me see if she's available. Jennifer came on the line within 2 minutes. Cassandra, congratulations on your wedding. I heard it was beautiful. What can I do for you? Thank you, Jennifer. I need you to activate the comprehensive financial separation documentation we prepared. All of it today. The full package? Including the property transfer notifications and the co-signing liability releases. Everything. My parents accelerated their timeline for financial exploitation, so I'm accelerating my timeline for financial independence. Understood. I'll have all the paperwork filed by close of business today. You should know that once these documents are processed, every financial connection between you and your parents will be legally severed. They won't be able to use your credit, your income, or your assets for anything. That's exactly what I want, Jennifer. And the property sale? Proceed as planned. I want them to understand that their actions have permanent consequences. After I hung up, Marcus looked at me with raised eyebrows. That sounded like serious business talk for someone who's supposed to be on her honeymoon. Just tying up some loose ends from yesterday, I said, leaning over to kiss his cheek. My parents are discovering that stealing from people has consequences. Are you okay? You seemed calmer than I expected after everything that happened. I took his hand and looked out over the Aegean Sea, feeling more peaceful than I had in years. I'm better than okay, Marcus. For the first time in my adult life, I don't have to worry about someone else's financial emergencies becoming my problem. I don't have to budget for other people's poor decisions. I don't have to lie awake at night wondering what crisis they'll create next. My phone buzzed with another text message. This time it was from my Uncle Richard, my father's brother. Cassie, your parents called me in tears. They say you've lost your mind and are trying to destroy their lives. What's going on? This doesn't sound like you. I showed the message to Marcus. They're mobilizing the extended family now, trying to get other people to pressure me into backing down. What are you going to do? I smiled and typed back. Uncle Richard, my parents stole $127,000 from my wedding fund to buy a vacation condo. Then they lied about it and told me to be grateful. I simply removed them from my financial accounts and stopped paying their bills. If that sounds crazy to you, maybe you should ask them to show you the bank statements from their Palm Beach Gardens purchases. I sent the message and turned my phone off completely. Now I'm going to enjoy my honeymoon with my husband, I told Marcus, while my parents learn what it's like to be financially responsible for their own lives. The sun was fully up now, painting the sea in brilliant shades of blue and gold. In a few hours, my parents would discover that their daughter had grown up. And more importantly, they would discover that grown-ups don't let anyone steal from their families. Not even their own parents. It wasn't the 17 missed calls that made everything click into place. It wasn't even my father's threats about calling the police on his own daughter for reclaiming stolen money. It was the message from my Uncle Richard, and specifically what he said about this not sounding like me. Marcus and I were lounging by the infinity pool at our resort, the late afternoon sun casting long shadows across the whitewashed terraces of Santorini, when I found myself staring at that message for the 20th time. This doesn't sound like you. Uncle Richard was right. This didn't sound like me. The old me would have immediately called my parents back, apologizing for overreacting, promising to fix everything, finding a way to make their emergency my responsibility once again. The old me would have canceled my honeymoon, flown home and spent the next 6 months rebuilding their financial safety net while they gave me lectures about family loyalty. But lying there in the Greek sunshine, with my husband of 3 days reading beside me and my phone finally blissfully silent, I realized something that hit me like a physical blow. This was the first time in my adult life that someone else's crisis wasn't automatically my crisis. And it felt incredible. I sat up abruptly, startling Marcus, who looked up from his book with concern. Baby, what's wrong? You look like you just saw a ghost. I think I just figured out why my parents really took that money, I said, my mind racing through years of suppressed memories that were suddenly flooding back with crystal clarity. What do you mean? They took it because they wanted a retirement condo. No, Marcus, they took it because they knew that if they waited until after the wedding, I wouldn't need them anymore. I pulled my phone back out, ignoring the new flood of messages, and opened my Photos app. I scrolled back through years of pictures, looking for something specific. When I found it, I showed Marcus the screen. This is from my college graduation, 4 years ago. See my parents in the background? Marcus squinted at the photo. They look proud, happy. Look closer, at what my mother is holding. He studied the image more carefully. Is that paperwork? Financial aid forms? She was holding my student loan refinancing documents. At my graduation ceremony, while I was celebrating finishing my degree, She was getting me to sign papers that would make her a co-beneficiary on my student loan forgiveness program. I swiped to the next photo. This is from when I got my first promotion 2 years ago. We went to dinner to celebrate, okay? That's the night they convinced me to put their names on my wedding savings account. They said it was just in case of emergencies, and they were so proud of my financial responsibility, they wanted to help me protect it. Another swipe. This is from Christmas last year when they gave me that beautiful necklace. It is a beautiful necklace. It cost $47. I know because I accidentally saw the receipt when Mom was throwing away wrapping paper. But that same week, they convinced me to co-sign for their home equity line of credit, because family helps family, and they trusted me to help them make good financial decisions. Marcus was starting to understand. They've been doing this for years. Not just years, Marcus. Decades. Every major milestone in my life, every success, every achievement, they found a way to turn it into a financial opportunity for themselves. I scrolled further back to a picture from my high school graduation. I was 17 here. Look what I'm holding. A check? My first paycheck from my summer job. I was so excited to finally have my own money. That same week, my parents opened a family savings account and convinced me that putting my paychecks there would teach me financial responsibility. I never saw most of that money again. The memories were coming faster now, each one more devastating than the last. When I got my driver's license, they insisted I needed to be on their car insurance plan for better rates. I've been paying the premiums for both their cars for 6 years. When I started freelance graphic design work, they convinced me to register the business under their names for tax advantages. They've been claiming my freelance income on their tax returns. When I graduated college debt-free because of scholarships and working 3 jobs, they celebrated by asking me to co-sign their mortgage refinance because my excellent credit deserved to be used for something meaningful. Marcus set down his book completely now, giving me his full attention. Cassandra, what you're describing, that's not family helping family. That's systematic financial exploitation. I know that now. But for years, I thought it was normal. I thought it was what loving daughters did. I thought the constant financial crises, the emergency calls, the guilt trips about family loyalty, I thought that was just what family looked like. I opened my banking app and showed him something I had never shown anyone before. This is my personal spending account, the one they don't have access to. Look at the balance. $3,400? Cassandra, you make excellent money. Where does the rest go? Automatic transfers to accounts they control, insurance premiums for policies in their names, minimum payments on credit cards I co-signed, monthly contributions to their retirement fund, emergency fund transfers whenever they have a crisis. Until yesterday, roughly 60% of my income was going to support their lifestyle. Marcus stared at the screen in horror. 60%. Cassandra, that's financial abuse. The word hit me like a slap. Financial abuse. I had never thought of it that way, but hearing him say it out loud made everything crystallize. They trained me from the time I was 16 to believe that my value as a daughter was directly tied to my financial usefulness to them. Every time I succeeded, they found a way to make that success about their security instead of my achievement. I thought about my wedding planning, how stressed I had been about every expense, how I had worked extra hours and side jobs to afford the wedding I wanted while my parents lived comfortably on my contributions. And the worst part? They made me grateful for the privilege. They convinced me that helping them was proof of my character, evidence that I was a good daughter, a responsible adult. They made their financial dependence on me feel like a gift I was giving them instead of a burden they were placing on me. That's why they took the wedding money on your wedding day specifically, Marcus said, understanding dawning in his voice. Exactly. They knew that after I got married, my priorities would shift, my loyalty would shift. They knew that I would start putting my husband and my future children before their comfort. So they took one last massive withdrawal before I became unavailable as their personal bank account. I scrolled through more photos, seeing them now with completely different eyes. Every family celebration, every achievement, every milestone, there was always an underlying financial transaction, always a new way for them to benefit from my success. The engagement party where they insisted on paying for the cake, then asked me to reimburse them plus a planning fee. My promotion celebration where they took credit for my work ethic, then asked me to increase my monthly contributions to their retirement fund because successful children take care of their parents. The family vacation they invited me on, then surprised me with the bill because you can afford it now. I looked at Marcus and I could see my own horror reflected in his eyes. I've been funding their entire lifestyle for years while living like a broke college student. I've been working multiple jobs so they could have spending money. I've been sacrificing my own financial security so they could feel wealthy. And they've been telling you that this arrangement was proof of your love for them. Yes, every time I questioned an expense or hesitated about a transfer, they would make it about my character. Family doesn't keep score, Cassandra. Love means sacrifice, honey. We raised you to be better than this selfishness. I stood up from my pool chair, suddenly unable to sit still. They didn't steal my wedding money because they needed it, Marcus. They stole it because they were terrified that I was growing up, that I was becoming someone who might start saying no, that I was building a life that didn't revolve around managing their crises. And they were right to be terrified, Marcus said quietly, because that's exactly what I've done. For the first time in 15 years, I'm not responsible for someone else's poor financial decisions. I'm not lying awake at night wondering what emergency they'll create next. I'm not budgeting their lifestyle into my own financial planning. I looked out over the Aegean Sea, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant oranges and purples. I thought love meant never saying no. I thought family meant automatic financial obligation. I thought being a good daughter meant being a human ATM with a smile. And now I know that love means boundaries. Family means mutual respect, not mutual exploitation. And being a good daughter means protecting my own family from people who would hurt us, even if those people happen to be my parents. My phone buzzed with another message, but I didn't even look at it. Let them panic, I said, feeling lighter than I had in years. Let them scramble. Let them figure out how to live within their actual means instead of mine. Are you worried they'll really call the police, or try to cause trouble for us? I smiled, and for the first time it felt like a smile with teeth in it. Let them try. I have documentation of every transfer, every account they've had access to, every payment I've made on their behalf. If they want to involve lawyers and police, they're going to discover that financial abuse goes both ways. And if they really do have consequences for you, then they'll learn that consequences work both ways too, and I've gotten very good at consequences. We returned from our honeymoon on a Tuesday afternoon, our skin still golden from the Mediterranean sun, our hearts still full from 7 days of uninterrupted happiness. Marcus carried our luggage up to our apartment while I sorted through a week's worth of mail, feeling more relaxed than I had in years. That peace lasted exactly 43 minutes. The buzzer to our building rang at 4:17 p.m., sharp and insistent. Then it rang again, and again. I walked to the intercom, already knowing who it would be. Cassandra Vale Donnelly, you open this door right now. My father's voice crackled through the speaker, tight with barely controlled rage. It's Donnelly now, Dad, and no, I won't be opening the door. Don't you dare play games with us, young lady. We've been waiting here for 2 hours. We flew back from Florida specifically to deal with this mess you've created. Flew back from Florida, so they had cut short their vacation in the condo they had bought with my wedding money to come and yell at me in person. The irony was almost beautiful. There's no mess to deal with, Dad. There's just you learning to live without access to my bank accounts. Cassandra, my mother's voice now, shrill and desperate. Please, honey, just let us come up so we can talk about this like adults. We're family. We can work this out. Marcus appeared in the doorway, raising his eyebrows in question. I mouthed my parents and pointed to the intercom. His expression immediately hardened. Mom, we are talking like adults. Adults who respect each other's financial boundaries. Adults who don't steal from their children's weddings. We didn't steal anything. Dad's voice was getting louder, and I could hear other people in the background, probably neighbors wondering what the shouting was about. We used money from a family account for a family emergency. Buying a luxury condo in Palm Beach Gardens is not a family emergency, Dad. That condo is an investment. It's for all of us. You can visit whenever you want. With what money, Dad? The money you stole? Or the money I was supposed to spend on my honeymoon after you ruined my wedding day? A long pause, then my mother's voice, sickly sweet and manipulative. Cassie, sweetheart, we know you're upset. We understand. But what you've done is so much worse than anything we did. Do you have any idea what you've put us through? We can't pay our bills. The utilities are demanding deposits. The insurance companies are threatening to cancel our policies. You've destroyed our lives over money, honey. Is money really more important than family? I looked at Marcus, who was shaking his head in disbelief. Let me come down, I said into the intercom. We'll talk in the lobby. Cass, are you sure? Marcus asked quietly. I need to see their faces when I tell them exactly what I think of their family emergency. The lobby of our building was small and elegant, with marble floors and floor-to-ceiling windows that let in the late afternoon light. My parents were standing near the mailboxes, and when I stepped off the elevator, I was struck by how different they looked. My father, usually impeccably groomed, had stubble and wrinkled clothes. His hair was disheveled, and there were dark circles under his eyes that made him look older than his 58 years. My mother looked even worse. Her makeup was smeared, her usually perfect hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she was wearing a wrinkled sundress that looked like she had slept in it. They looked like people whose world had collapsed overnight. Good. Cassandra, my mother said, rushing toward me with her arms outstretched as if she intended to hug me. Oh, sweetheart, thank God you're finally— Stop right there, I said, holding up my hand. She froze mid-step, confusion flickering across her face. We need to sit down and figure out how to fix this disaster, my father said, his voice carrying the tone of someone accustomed to being obeyed. You've made your point, Cassandra. Now it's time to be reasonable. I am being reasonable, Dad. For the first time in my adult life, I'm being completely reasonable. Reasonable? My mother's voice cracked. You call destroying your parents' lives reasonable? We raised you, Cassandra. We sacrificed everything for you. We put you through school. We supported your dreams.
You put me through school?
I interrupted, my voice deadly calm. Mom, I worked 3 jobs to pay for college. I graduated debt-free because of scholarships and 16-hour workdays, not because of anything you contributed. We provided emotional support. You provided guilt trips and financial manipulation. My father stepped forward, his face flushing red. That's enough, Cassandra. You're being disrespectful and ungrateful. We're your parents and you owe us. I owe you nothing, I said, and the words felt like liberation. I don't owe you money, I don't owe you financial security, and I certainly don't owe you access to my accounts, so you can steal from my wedding. It wasn't stealing, my mother shrieked, loud enough that the building's doorman looked over with concern. It was family money, money that we helped you save. When, Mom? When exactly did you help me save money? When you put my teenage paychecks into accounts you controlled, when you convinced me to put your names on my wedding savings just in case, when you used my credit to qualify for mortgages and loans you couldn't afford on your own. You needed to be honest, you needed to live within your means, you needed to stop treating your daughter like a human credit card. My father's face was now a dangerous shade of purple. You listen to me, you selfish little brat. We didn't raise you to be cruel. We didn't raise you to abandon your family when they need you most. No, Dad. You raised me to be a financial resource. You raised me to believe that my value was tied to my usefulness to you. You raised me to think that love meant unlimited access to my bank accounts. That's not. You want to know what you didn't raise me to be? I continued, my voice getting stronger with each word. You didn't raise me to protect myself. You didn't raise me to have boundaries. You didn't raise me to say no when someone tries to exploit me. I took a step closer to them, and I saw something flicker in my mother's eyes that I had never seen before. Fear. But Marcus's family, they did raise him those ways. And Marcus taught me that love doesn't come with automatic financial obligations, that family means mutual respect, not one-sided exploitation, that healthy relationships have boundaries. So that's it? My father spat. You're choosing him over us. I'm choosing myself, Dad. For the first time in my life, I'm choosing my own financial security over your comfort. I'm choosing my marriage over your manipulation. I'm choosing my future over your past. My mother started crying then, real tears this time instead of the manipulative fake sobbing I had grown accustomed to over the years. Please, Cassie, we're sorry. We made a mistake. We can pay you back. We can— With what money, Mom? The retirement fund I've been contributing to for 2 years. The investment account that's in my name. The house that I legally own because your credit couldn't qualify for the mortgage. The crying stopped abruptly. You wouldn't, she whispered. I already have. The house goes on the market next week. You have 53 days to find alternative housing arrangements. You can't be serious, my father said, but his voice had lost its commanding tone. That's our home, Cassandra. We've lived there for 3 years. You've lived in my house for 3 years, rent-free, while I paid the mortgage, the insurance, the property taxes, and the utilities, while you convinced me that you were struggling financially and needed my help to survive. I pulled out my phone and showed them a screenshot I had taken the day before. This is your retirement account balance as of yesterday morning. $820,000. $820,000 that you accumulated while telling me you could barely afford groceries. Both of them stared at the screen in horror. How did you get access to, my father started. The same way you got access to my wedding fund, Dad. You gave me co-management privileges because my credit and income were necessary to secure better investment options for you. That money is for our retirement, my mother whispered, and the money you stole was for my wedding. But somehow your retirement was more important than my marriage. I put my phone away and looked at both of them, really looked at them, and felt absolutely nothing. No guilt, no love, no obligation, no desire to fix their problems or ease their suffering, just relief that I was finally free. Here's what's going to happen, I said, my voice clear and final. You're going to stay out of my life. You're not going to call, text, email, or show up at my home or workplace. You're not going to try to manipulate other family members into pressuring me. You're not going to contact Marcus or his family. And if we don't, my father asked, trying to muster some last vestige of authority, then I'll file a restraining order for financial harassment and emotional abuse, and I'll make sure every family member, every mutual friend, and every neighbor knows exactly how you funded your comfortable lifestyle. I turned toward the elevator, then paused and looked back at them one final time. Oh, and Mom, Dad, congratulations on your retirement condo. I hope it was worth losing your daughter. The elevator doors closed between us, and I never saw their faces again. The silence in our apartment after the elevator doors closed was deafening. Marcus was waiting for me when I stepped back inside, his face a mixture of concern and admiration. How do you feel? He asked, pulling me into his arms. Empty, I said honestly, but the good kind of empty. Like when you finally clean out a closet that's been cluttered for years. But I wasn't finished. Not even close. The next morning, I woke up before dawn with a clarity of purpose that felt almost surgical. I made coffee, opened my laptop, and began the systematic dismantling of every remaining connection between myself and the people who had raised me. First, I contacted my bank and formally requested documentation of every transaction my parents had made from accounts where I was the primary holder. Every withdrawal, every transfer, every automatic payment. I needed a complete paper trail, not just for my own records but because I suspected this wasn't over. The bank representative, a woman named Patricia who had handled my accounts for 3 years, was professional but clearly shocked by what the records revealed. Mrs. Donnelly, I have to ask, were you aware that over the past 2 years there have been $89,000 in withdrawals from accounts where you're the primary holder, all authorized by secondary account holders Margaret and Edmund Vale? I am now, Patricia. I need all of those transactions documented, and I need all secondary access removed from every account immediately. Of course, and ma'am, I'm required to inform you that there have been several attempts to access these accounts since Monday, all denied due to the access restrictions you implemented. Good. If there are any further attempts, I want them documented as unauthorized access attempts. Next, I called my insurance company. My parents had been covered under my health, dental, and vision policies since my father's construction business folded, and they lost their employer coverage. I had been paying premiums for 3 people while thinking I was helping them through a temporary crisis. Temporary? It had been 3 years. I need to remove Margaret Vale and Edmund Vale from all my policies, effective immediately, I told the representative. Mrs. Donnelly, that will leave them without coverage. Are you sure you want to? I'm certain. Please send me confirmation in writing that they've been removed. After that came the phone plans. Both of my parents had been on my family plan for 4 years, since they claimed their credit couldn't qualify them for their own accounts. I had been paying for 3 unlimited data plans while using barely half of my own monthly allowance. I need to remove 2 lines from my account and transfer the numbers to new individual accounts under different names, I told the Verizon representative. Ma'am, the account holders for those numbers will need to set up their own payment methods and credit checks. Given that they'll be starting new accounts, there may be deposits required if their credit doesn't meet our standards. That's not my problem anymore. But the most satisfying call was to their credit card companies. Over the years, I had co-signed for 3 different credit cards that my parents needed for emergencies. The emergencies had included furniture shopping, vacation bookings, and electronics purchases that somehow never qualified as luxuries in their minds. I'm requesting removal as a co-signer from account number 404 Twine, I told the Chase representative. Mrs. Donnelly, I need to inform you that removing yourself as a cosigner will likely result in the account being frozen or closed if the primary account holders don't meet our current credit requirements on their own. I understand completely. And there's currently a balance of $12,400 on this account. That's unfortunate for the primary account holders. The Discover card had a balance of $8,700. In total, I was removing myself from responsibility for $34,300 in debt that my parents would now have to manage entirely on their own credit. By noon, I had methodically severed every financial connection that still existed between us. But I wasn't finished with the severance. There were other ties to cut. I logged into Facebook and unfriended both of my parents, then blocked them entirely. I did the same on Instagram, LinkedIn, and every other social media platform where we were connected. I changed my phone number and email address, providing the new information only to Marcus, my closest friends, and my employer. Then I tackled the physical connections. I had a key to their house, my house, technically, and they had a key to my apartment. I drove to their neighborhood and let myself in while they were out, probably scrambling to find new insurance or phone services. The house was exactly as I remembered it, filled with furniture I had helped them buy and appliances I had co-signed for. In the master bedroom, I found the jewelry box where my mother kept my grandmother's wedding ring, the ring that was supposed to be mine someday, the ring they had threatened to withhold if I didn't start acting like a grateful daughter. I took it. It was legally mine anyway, according to my grandmother's will. I also took the photo albums from my childhood, every picture of me from birth through high school graduation, every memory they might try to use as leverage or hold hostage in future manipulation attempts. In my father's study, I found something that made my blood run cold, a folder labeled Cassie's Accounts, containing printouts of my bank statements, copies of my tax returns, and a handwritten list of my employment benefits, including my retirement matching and life insurance policies. They had been tracking my finances far more comprehensively than I had realized. I took the entire folder. Before I left, I placed a single envelope on their kitchen counter. Inside was a typed letter, printed on legal letterhead from Jennifer Mitchell's office, Margaret and Edmund Vale. This letter serves as formal notification that Cassandra Vale Donnelly has terminated all financial relationships and personal connections with you, effective immediately. Any attempts to contact Mrs. Donnelly directly, through intermediaries, or via social media will be considered harassment and may result in legal action. Any attempts to access financial accounts, credit lines, or other financial instruments where Mrs. Donnelly was previously a cosigner or authorized user will be considered attempted fraud and will be reported to appropriate authorities. The property located at 847 Maple Grove Drive will be sold within 60 days. You have until March 15th to vacate the premises and remove all personal belongings. This decision is final and non-negotiable. Jennifer Mitchell, attorney at law. On behalf of Cassandra Vale Donnelly, I left my key on top of the letter and walked out of their house for the last time. But the day wasn't over yet. That evening, I sent a carefully crafted email to every family member who had received calls from my parents over the past week. Uncle Richard, Aunt Susan, my cousins Michelle and David, my grandmother on my mother's side. The email was brief, factual, and included attachments. Hi everyone, I wanted to address the stories you may have heard about recent events between my parents and me. On my wedding day, my parents withdrew $127,000 from my wedding fund without permission to purchase a luxury condominium in Palm Beach Gardens. When confronted, they claimed this was justified because family helps family. In response, I have severed all financial connections with them and am no longer financially responsible for their bills, insurance, housing, or other expenses. Attached you will find bank statements showing the unauthorized withdrawals and documentation of their actual financial status, including retirement savings of over $800,000. I am sharing this information because I believe family members deserve to know the truth about why this relationship has ended, and because some of you may be approached for financial assistance as my parents adjust to living within their actual means. I hope you understand that this decision was necessary to protect my marriage and my future. Best regards, Cassandra. I sent the email at 9:47 p.m. on a Wednesday night, then turned off my phone and went to bed. By morning, my parents would wake up to discover that their daughter hadn't just left them. She had erased herself from their lives entirely while simultaneously ensuring that their entire extended family knew exactly why. They had wanted to play hardball. I had just shown them what hardball actually looked like. The family intervention began at 7:23 a.m. on Thursday morning, less than 10 hours after I had sent my truth-telling email to the extended family. I was making coffee in our kitchen when Marcus's phone rang. My new number was still known only to a select few, but apparently my family had figured out how to reach me through my husband. "It's your Uncle Richard," Marcus said, holding up his phone with a grimace. "Should I answer?" I nodded, curious to see which narrative had reached him first, my documented evidence or my parents' damage control. Marcus put the call on speaker. "Marcus, thank God I got through to you. I need to talk to Cassandra immediately. This family is falling apart, and she's the only one who can fix it." "Good morning, Uncle Richard," I said calmly, sipping my coffee. "I'm right here." "Cassandra, honey, I got your email last night and I've been up all night thinking about this. I also got a call from your parents at 6 this morning. They're devastated, sweetheart. Absolutely destroyed. I imagine they are. Did you look at the bank statements I attached?" A long pause. "I did. And honey, I'm not saying what they did was right, but destroying your family over money? That's not the Cassandra I know." "Uncle Richard, the Cassandra you know was being financially abused for 15 years. The Cassandra you're talking to now is someone who learned to protect herself. But they're your parents, Cassie. They raised you. They made mistakes, sure, but don't you think you're being a little extreme?" I looked at Marcus, who was shaking his head in disgust. "Uncle Richard, did you see the part in my email where they withdrew $127,000 from my wedding fund without permission? Did you see the part where they've been taking money from my accounts while telling me they could barely afford groceries?" "I saw that, but your mother explained." "Let me stop you right there. What exactly did my mother explain?" "She said that money was in a family account that you had all agreed could be used for family emergencies. She said the condo purchase was an investment for everyone, and that you could use it too. She said you're being vindictive because you're jealous that they're finally able to retire comfortably." I nearly laughed. "Uncle Richard, did my mother happen to mention that their comfortable retirement includes over $800,000 in savings that I've been contributing to while they told me they were struggling?" "Well, she said that money was from insurance settlements and your father's business investments." "Business investments? From the construction business that went bankrupt 3 years ago. The business that resulted in me co-signing their mortgage because they couldn't qualify on their own." Another pause. "Cassandra, I'm not taking sides here. I'm just saying that family finds a way to work through these things. Your grandmother would be heartbroken if she knew the family was splitting apart like this." "My grandmother left me her wedding ring specifically because she wanted me to have it for my own wedding. Did my parents mention that they've been holding it hostage to force me to keep funding their lifestyle?" "They never said anything about a ring. That's because I went and took it yesterday along with all my childhood photos and the folder where they'd been tracking my bank accounts and employment benefits for years." "They were tracking your everything, Uncle Richard. Every account, every benefit, every financial detail of my life. They had printouts of my tax returns and notes about my life insurance policies. This wasn't family helping family. This was systematic financial exploitation." I could hear him breathing heavily through the phone. "Even if that's true, Cassie, and I'm not saying it isn't, but even if it's true, they're still your parents. They're still family. Don't you think there's a way to forgive and move forward?" "Uncle Richard, if a stranger had stolen $127,000 from my wedding fund, would you tell me to forgive them and move forward? That's different. That would be a crime. This is a crime too. It's just a crime committed by people who happen to share my DNA." Marcus gestured to his watch. He had to leave for work in 10 minutes, and I could see he didn't want to leave me dealing with this alone. "I have to go, Uncle Richard. But I want you to think about something. In all the years you've known me, have I ever been vindictive? Have I ever been cruel or unreasonable? No, of course not. Then maybe consider that if I'm taking such extreme measures, it's because the situation was already extreme. Maybe consider that you don't have the full story, even after my parents spent 6 hours this morning trying to manage the narrative. But Cassie, I love you, Uncle Richard. But I'm not discussing this anymore. My decision is final." I hung up and immediately turned off Marcus's phone. It rang again within 30 seconds. "This is going to continue all day, isn't it?" Marcus asked. "Probably all week. They're going to mobilize everyone they can think of to pressure me into backing down." I was right. Over the next 6 days, I received contact attempts from 14 different family members, 3 family friends, my parents' pastor, and even my high school guidance counselor who my mother had apparently tracked down and convinced to call me about family healing. Each conversation followed the same pattern. They would start with concern for family unity. I would provide specific facts about the financial abuse. They would acknowledge that my parents had made mistakes but emphasize forgiveness and family loyalty. I would ask if they would forgive someone who stole their wedding money. They would explain why this was different because it was family. I would end the conversation, but the most revealing call came from my cousin Michelle on Sunday afternoon. Michelle was only 2 years older than me, and we had been close growing up. "Cass, I have to ask you something and I need you to be honest with me." "Okay. In your email you mentioned that Aunt Margaret and Uncle Ed might approach family members for financial help. Have they already done that?" I felt my stomach tighten. "What do you mean?" "They called my mom yesterday, said they were having temporary cash flow problems because of misunderstandings with their bank accounts. They asked if she could loan them $5,000 to cover utilities and groceries while they sorted everything out. And Mom gave it to them. But Cass, if they really have $800,000 in retirement savings like your bank statements showed, why would they need to borrow grocery money from my mom?" I closed my eyes. "Because they're not just financial abusers, Michelle. They're financial predators. And when their primary victim becomes unavailable, they find new victims. Are you saying they're going to try to do to my family what they did to you?" "I'm saying they're already doing it. The temporary cash flow problems are because I stopped paying their bills. The misunderstandings with bank accounts are because I removed myself from their financial access, and the $5,000 loan is the beginning of exactly the same pattern they used with me." A long silence. "What should I tell my mom?" "Tell her to ask them to show her the bank statements from their retirement account. Tell her to ask why they need grocery money when they just bought a $300,000 condo in Florida. Tell her to ask why their daughter's wedding fund was available for their family emergency but their own retirement savings weren't. And if they can't answer those questions, then your mom will know exactly what kind of people she's dealing with." Michelle hung up without saying goodbye, but she called back 20 minutes later. "My mom confronted them, asked them to explain the bank statements you sent, asked why they needed our money if they had their own. And they hung up on her. But not before Uncle Ed called her a disloyal sister for believing lies about family." "I'm sorry, Michelle. I really am." "Don't be sorry, Cass. Be proud. You just saved my family from making the same mistake you made for 15 years. That night, Marcus found me sitting on our balcony, staring out at the city lights. "How are you holding up?" he asked, settling into the chair beside me. "Better than I expected. It's weird. Every family member who calls to convince me I'm wrong just ends up proving I'm right." "What do you mean?" "They all start by telling me that family forgives, family works through problems, family doesn't abandon each other over money. But then when I ask if they would tolerate the same treatment from a stranger, or when I show them evidence of the systematic abuse, they can't defend it. So they're starting to see the truth? Some of them. The ones who are willing to look at evidence instead of just accepting my parents' version of events. But Marcus? Yeah? The ones who are still pressuring me to reconcile, they're telling me more about themselves than they are about family loyalty." "How so?" "They're telling me that they think women should tolerate financial abuse if it comes from family. They're telling me that maintaining appearances is more important than protecting yourself. They're telling me that they would rather see me continue being victimized than deal with the discomfort of acknowledging that people they love are capable of systematic cruelty." I leaned back in my chair, feeling lighter with each word. "And honestly, I'm grateful they're showing me who they really are. And honestly, I'm grateful they're showing me who they really are. Because now I know which family members actually love me, and which ones just love the idea of a family that looks perfect from the outside." "Are you worried that you'll regret cutting them all off?" I thought about it seriously, running through all the relationships I was potentially losing, all the future family gatherings I wouldn't attend, all the connections that might be permanently severed. "No," I said finally, "I'm not worried about that at all. Because I'd rather have a small circle of people who respect my boundaries than a large circle of people who think love means tolerating abuse." My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost didn't look at it, but something made me check. It was from my cousin David. "Saw your email. You're braver than I ever was. My dad did the same thing to me for years. Never had the courage to cut him off. Proud of you." I showed the text to Marcus. "See?" I said. "That's how I know I made the right choice. Because somewhere out there, someone else who was trapped in the same cycle is feeling less alone." I turned off my phone and took my husband's hand. "Now come on. Let's go inside and plan something fun for next weekend. Something that we can afford because I'm not sending 60% of my income to people who see me as a human ATM." For the first time in 15 years, my money was actually mine, and it felt incredible. 6 weeks of blessed silence. 6 weeks of waking up without dreading my phone, of checking my bank accounts without fear, of living my life without the constant anxiety that someone else's crisis was about to become my emergency. Marcus and I had fallen into a beautiful routine, weekend trips we could actually afford, dinners out without calculating how much we needed to save for someone else's bills, conversations about our future that didn't include managing other people's financial disasters. I should have known it was too quiet to last. The call came on a Tuesday morning at 6:34 a.m., not from my parents. They had apparently learned that my new number was truly unavailable to them. This call was from Mercy General Hospital. Is this Cassandra Donnelly? Yes, this is Cassandra. Ma'am, I'm calling from the emergency department at Mercy General. Your father, Edmund Vale, was brought in by ambulance approximately 30 minutes ago. He's listed you as his emergency contact, and we need you to come in immediately to discuss his condition and treatment options. My blood went cold. Emergency contact. Of course they had kept me as their emergency contact, even after everything that had happened. What's his condition? I asked, already knowing this was going to be complicated. Ma'am, I can't discuss medical details over the phone, but I can tell you that he's stable and conscious. However, there are some urgent financial and treatment decisions that need to be made, and as his listed emergency contact and medical power of attorney, we need you here as soon as possible. Medical power of attorney. I had forgotten about that document, signed 3 years ago when my father had his gallbladder surgery, and they had insisted someone needed to have medical decision-making authority just in case. I'll be there within the hour, I said, ending the call and immediately dialing Marcus. Cass, what's wrong? You sound shaken. My father's in the emergency room. They want me there for medical and financial decisions. I'm his emergency contact and I have medical power of attorney. Do you want me to come with you? Yes, definitely yes. The drive to Mercy General took 43 minutes through morning traffic, and with every mile, I felt the familiar dread creeping back into my chest. This was exactly the kind of crisis my parents had always used to manipulate me. Urgent, emotional, time-sensitive situations where I had to make quick decisions without time to think through the consequences. But I wasn't the same person I had been 6 weeks ago, and I had Marcus beside me now, someone who could help me see clearly when emotions threatened to cloud my judgment. The emergency department was busy and chaotic, filled with the sounds of monitors beeping and staff calling out medical instructions. We found the information desk, where a tired-looking woman in scrubs directed us to room 2047. My father was lying in a hospital bed, looking smaller and more frail than I had ever seen him. He had an IV in his arm and was connected to several monitors, but his eyes were alert and focused when he saw me walk through the door. Cassie, he said, his voice weak but unmistakably relieved, thank God you came. I wasn't sure if you would. Standing beside his bed was my mother, who looked like she hadn't slept in days. When she saw me, her eyes filled with tears. Oh, sweetheart, I'm so glad you're here. We've been so scared, and the doctors are saying such terrible things about costs and insurance, and we don't know what to do. I looked around the room, taking in the situation. My father appeared to be stable, conscious, and in no immediate life-threatening danger. This felt more like a serious medical situation than a genuine emergency. What happened? I asked, directing my question to the nurse who had just entered the room. Mr. Vale had what appears to be a mild heart attack early this morning. He's stable now, but he'll need to stay for observation and possibly require cardiac catheterization depending on the results of his tests. And his insurance situation. The nurse glanced uncomfortably between my parents and me. That's actually something you'll need to discuss with our financial coordinator. There seem to be some issues with coverage. My mother stepped forward, reaching for my hand. Cassie, honey, there's been a problem with our insurance. When you removed us from your policy, we tried to get our own coverage, but with your father's pre-existing conditions and our credit situation, the premiums were so expensive, and the deductibles were so high. I pulled my hand away. Are you telling me you don't have health insurance? We have insurance, my father said quickly. It's just limited, high deductible, and this kind of emergency care, the tests they want to run, the procedures they're recommending, we're looking at $50,000 in out-of-pocket expenses. There it was, the hook, the crisis that required my immediate financial intervention, the emergency that only I could solve. Marcus stepped closer to me and I could feel his presence steadying me. I'm sorry to hear about your insurance situation, I said calmly. What does this have to do with me? My parents exchanged a look of shock. Cassie, my mother said, her voice taking on that familiar manipulative tone, You're his emergency contact. You have medical power of attorney. The hospital needs someone to guarantee payment for his treatment. And you expect me to guarantee payment for $80,000 in medical expenses. You're our daughter, my father said, his voice getting stronger with indignation. This is life and death, Cassandra. This isn't about money, it's about family. Actually, Dad, according to you in the hospital, this is entirely about money. You're asking me to take financial responsibility for your medical care because you chose not to maintain adequate insurance coverage. We couldn't afford adequate coverage, my mother snapped. After what you did to us, we had to choose between housing and health insurance. I looked at her steadily. You had to choose between the luxury condo in Palm Beach Gardens that you bought with my wedding money and health insurance. You chose the condo. That's not fair. You have over $800,000 in retirement savings, Mom. You could afford health insurance. You chose not to prioritize it. The room fell silent except for the beeping of my father's monitors. So what are you saying? My father asked, his voice barely a whisper. You're going to let me die because you're angry about money? It was a masterful manipulation attempt. The ultimate guilt trip. Life or death. Choose between your father's survival and your financial boundaries. But I had learned something important over the past 6 weeks. I had learned the difference between an emergency and a crisis that someone else had created through their own poor choices. Dad, you're not dying. The nurse said you're stable. You had a mild heart attack, and you need treatment and observation. That's a medical situation, not a financial emergency. But the costs are your responsibility, just like they would be for any other adult who chose to live without adequate insurance coverage. But I'm your father. Yes, you are. And 6 weeks ago you chose a vacation condo over my wedding day. You chose your comfort over my financial security. You chose to steal from me rather than live within your means. I pulled out my phone and opened my notes app, where I had been keeping a record of conversations like this. But here's what I'm willing to do, Dad. I'm willing to help you apply for charity care through the hospital. I'm willing to help you set up a payment plan with the financial department. I'm willing to help you contact social services about emergency assistance programs. That's not enough, Cassandra, my mother said coldly. He needs immediate treatment, and they need payment guarantees today. Then you should probably call your bank and arrange to liquidate some of your retirement savings to cover the costs. That money is for our retirement. And my wedding money was for my wedding, but that didn't stop you from taking it. A doctor entered the room looking harried and professional. Mr. Vale, I need to discuss your treatment plan and get authorization for the cardiac catheterization we discussed. Doctor, my mother said quickly, this is our daughter. She has medical power of attorney, and she'll be handling the financial arrangements. The doctor looked at me expectantly. Doctor, I need to clarify something. While I am listed as having medical power of attorney for my father, I am not taking financial responsibility for his care. Any financial arrangements need to be made with the patients themselves, but the power of attorney gives me the authority to make medical decisions if he's unable to make them himself. It doesn't make me financially responsible for those decisions. I looked at my father, who was staring at me with a mixture of shock and disbelief. Dad, I want you to get the medical care you need. I hope you recover fully and quickly, but I'm not going to bankrupt myself or jeopardize my marriage to pay for care that you can afford with your own assets. Cassandra, my mother hissed, if you walk out of here now, you'll never be welcome in this family again. I looked at her for a long moment, then at my father, then at Marcus, who nodded almost imperceptibly. Mom, I walked out of this family 6 weeks ago when you stole my wedding money. I'm only here now because the hospital called me as an emergency contact, a status I'm going to change before I leave today. I turned to the doctor. I'm resigning my medical power of attorney, effective immediately. Please remove me as Mr. Vale's emergency contact and update his records to reflect that I am not authorized to make medical or financial decisions on his behalf. Cassandra, my father called out as I headed toward the door. I stopped and looked back at him one final time. Dad, you taught me that family doesn't keep score. You were right, family doesn't keep score. But you also taught me that when someone steals from you repeatedly, lies to you consistently, and uses emotional manipulation to control you financially, they're not family anymore. They're just people who happen to share your DNA. I took Marcus's hand and walked out of the hospital room. In the elevator, Marcus squeezed my hand. How do you feel? Free, I said. For the first time in my life, someone else's crisis is actually their own crisis to solve. The elevator doors opened, and we walked out into the bright afternoon sunshine. Behind us, my parents were probably scrambling to figure out how to pay for medical care with their own money, for the first time in their adult lives. Ahead of us was the rest of our life together, unencumbered by other people's emergencies and unlimited financial demands. I had finally, truly, completely grown up, and it felt like flying. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.